Welcome to Trauma Tea and Tangents, the podcast for those of you who feel like you've never fully been seen, for those whose experiences seem to be chronically invalidated, and for those who have been told they are too much and not enough all at the same time. I'm Hannah Guy, a trauma therapist and the owner of Revive Therapy Services based out of Philadelphia. And this podcast is all about the messy, complicated, and very real parts of being human. Mental health, relationships, trauma, healing, and honestly, just basic life shit. You name it, and we will probably talk about it here. Just a little disclaimer for you. This is not therapy. Nobody's going to make you do a body scan or talk about your triggers. Unless you really want to, then go off, queen. And with all of that being said, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Trauma Tea and Tangents. I am your host, Hannah Guy. And today we have Katelyn Campbell. She is a PsyD, and she loves working with people who struggle with eating disorders, body image issues, and kind of everything that goes along with that. So trauma, mood disorders, all of the things. Katelyn, yes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about no pun intended here, the relationship between eating disorders and relationships and attachment, right? Because I think people tend to see eating disorders just independently of itself. And I do think relationships and attachment play a huge role in eating disorders. And so I'm just going to kind of give the mic to you to maybe tell us more about that and how they intersect.
Sure. I first learned about this when I started my specialized training in eating disorders, and my supervisor introduced this concept to me, and she said that eating disorders are family disorders. And as a student, I was like, what does that mean? This is such a personal experience that you see in an individual. How could it possibly be a family disorder? And really what she meant is that how we how we grow up in relation to other people really reflects how we tend to end up in relationship to food. One of our earliest connections is between, a caregiver and us, is how we are fed and how our basic needs are met. And then as we grow our family system, we are both nurtured through relationships. It becomes how we develop our foundation of what do I expect from other people? How are other people going to be reliable to me? If I need someone, are they going to be available to me, or am I going to burden them if I need something from them? And then similarly, we could even look at this from the perspective of how is food discussed and kind of held within the family. What's the narrative on food and body as I grow up, and what that means for morality even.
So yeah, it's bigger than just eating disorder.
Yes.
So when your professor, you said?
It was a supervisor
said that they're family disorders, and eating disorder is a family disorder. That's what was said.
Mm-hmm.
The perspective or thought that came up for me was more so less around the actual relationship with food, but more so how do members of the family interact, and how have other families' nervous systems impacted your nervous system's capability and capacity to handle things, right? So when you're an infant, I kind of am like your nervous system is a blob, and it's developed and formed based on how your caregivers care for you. And if your needs are being met, your nervous system develops pretty secure, steady, reliable understanding of what is safe and what is not safe. And I've also heard this concept that eating disorders are primarily dissociative. Have you heard of it that way too?
Can you expand a little bit on what you mean?
Yeah. So it's a way to disconnect from the actual problem.
Yes.
Right? It's a way to be like, I'm going to hyperfixate on this thing over here because I can't tolerate what's happening over here.
Yes. Because depending on kind of what's going on within the system of the family, there can either be, oftentimes it's too much or too little in terms of what's going on with the nervous system input from the family. There's either an intrusion experience where the only thing you have is retreat into the self or the body. And that's the only mechanism of control or separation. That individual has, or there's too much distance, and there's that's the only thing that kind of is organizing around that individual.
Right. Like that individual is like, I'm responsible for my own self-soothing and
Yes.
self-care. Yeah,
Yeah.
because no one
If
else is gonna do it for me.
Yep. If I
Yeah.
need anything, I can't rely on anybody else to contain or manage any of my emotional needs. And so
Mhm.
I've got to find something. And for most of us, food is the thing that is readily accessible all the time, at least if you're privileged enough to have it. And so
Right,
it
right.
becomes like a quickly accessible regulator. And
Mhm.
oftentimes it kind of becomes a bit of a metaphor for our relationships as we move forward.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Do you notice with the people you work with, do you notice certain themes from within their family of origin?
So are you thinking about, like, restriction versus, like, binge eating and that?
It could be either or. I'm more so seeing it as I feel like I've seen a lot of families with eating disorders where like conflict is very much like avoided.
Mhm.
And if conflict happens, it's like the end of the world. It's disaster, it's catastrophe. And so it's like we have to maintain this sense of saving face no matter what. And so we push, 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 push it down.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, oftentimes you see I think, with everything with eating disorders is you see extremes on different ends of a spectrum. So you'll see
Mhm.
families that or family histories of really, really high performing, like, high achieving or, like, a push to become really high performing and high achieving, like, that's really what gets the needs met. It's like, don't cause too much trouble, but be a really, really good kid, and if there's conflict within the family, we don't talk about it, we don't address it, we sort of stuff it away. And you kind of almost see
Mhm.
how the metaphor can almost evolve from there with that sort of hyper responsibility, that hyper,
Yeah.
independence can then manifest in that individual's relationship with everything in their life,
Yeah.
especially as it pertains to food and how that can start to become really almost comforting in the sense of
Mhm.
this is my own sense of comfort. We don't talk about this. If something's going wrong in my life or if something really traumatic or upsetting happens, I kind of have to find a way to go within and hang on to this and deal with this myself. And
Mhm.
that ability to restrict or manage or control the body can bring this sort of illusion of comfort to that individual.
Yes. And it feels in the moment
Mhm.
really relieving, really relieving.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, and then, sometimes you'll also see families where there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of or neglect potentially,
Mhm.
where the eating disorder also becomes a communicator of something is really wrong and I have no voice to be able to speak anything, but this is one way of being able to really communicate something
Yeah.
is not right here. And so I often hear that feedback a lot from individuals when they're older is like reflecting back and realizing that the eating disorder, the behaviors were a voice for them when their voice was not safe to use.
And in that sense, and I know some people are gonna not maybe understand what I'm saying, I see it as like how adaptive of your brain to come up with that.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Your brain was like, I can't find safety here or here or here. However, I can communicate and provide safety through this specific avenue of an eating disorder.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of wild what our brains can do. And then
Absolutely.
and then we hit a point where it's just like, okay, yes, that was adaptive for that time. And then it gets to a place where it's like this isn't healthy and this is actually maladaptive. And we now gotta like undo what happened here. Or I don't even want to say undo. I like redo kind of like our sense of safety and our understanding that we can take up space in the world and our needs do matter and we can communicate our needs. And so this kind of switches over into the idea of how can using relationships help you heal from an eating disorder, right? We talked about the impact of relationships causing one. On the other side, can they help you heal?
Yes. I so the thing that I think is so vulnerable about relationships is they are about wanting things. Because whenever we show up in a relationship, we are asking for reciprocity. We're asking to be seen. And a lot of times an eating disorder is about retreating into the self. And in a relationship is about sharing and vulnerability and a willingness to be seen and a willingness to share and a willingness to share this is what I want or need from another person. And that can be terrifying for someone who, for a long time, the idea of expressing or even admitting wants can feel pretty threatening to their nervous system. They've had a system that's always taken comfort in, if you're independent, if you don't want, need, or ask anything of people, you'll be safe. And now all of a sudden you're wanting, needing, and asking from other people. That could mean that you're too much for them. What if people get overwhelmed by you and retreat or move away from you? Oftentimes, usually I often see a fear of, I'm going to overwhelm people, or if I ask anything of them, are they going to leave me?
So do you think there's any relation to like fear of abandonment with eating disorders and eating disorders?
I think it can show up in any of the, styles of
Yeah.
attachment, but I will say I see that one a lot, is this fear of what if I'm too much for someone? Because you think about how in any form of an eating disorder, that fear of wanting or needing. And you'll even see that in if someone's struggling with, say, even binge eating. A lot of people mistake binge eating because it's really often driven by restriction on the front end and this like
Mhm.
cycle of withholding and then feeling the body sort of taking over and then feeling horrendously guilty for needing and feeling
Right.
like I have to restrict again in some way to kind of undo that. So all eating disorders really have this component of no, I needed something. Like what if I
How
was
dare
too
I?
Yeah, what if I was too much? So I think that fear of being abandoned is so central to a lot of the fear of the vulnerability and the fear of showing up in a relationship. But if you are able to do that safely, especially, I think this is the key, is also having identified a person who is safe to do that with you as
Yes.
well, which is
Yes.
definitely tricky. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but
You can't do it with just anyone.
yeah,
That's for
yeah, yeah, yeah. Is like once you've really and that can even be hard. It can be hard to trust a safe person when they're there. And even if we know that they're safe, it can be hard for the nervous system to trust, are they really safe?
Well, and I think our sense of safety is skewed.
Mhm.
So what is actually safe feels like it's not safe. I kind of when I work with people with PTSD or like complex PTSD, I use this analogy of it's like you have a smoke detector and the smoke detector is supposed to go off to let you know, hey, there's a fire, not safe, get out of the house. However, when you have trauma, it's like you have a faulty smoke detector that goes off when you're boiling pasta. So then no matter what, you're just sitting there chilling, making your pasta. A smoke detector goes off, and you're like, okay, I'm just boiling pasta. But your brain, when you have that faulty smoke detector in your nervous system going off, it acts like there's actual threat there. It's like
Mhm.
the house is burning down and we need to get out. And so having relationships with people and repairing relationships with people and involving people in your eating disorder recovery is inherently going to most likely feel like the last thing you should do.
That is so true. 100%.
And I think, Caitlin, you did a good job of calling out, making sure you have a safe person to do it with, right? And not just practicing it with a caregiver who like traumatized you and you don't have a good relationship with right now. That's not maybe the best person to do it with, but starting out with a eating disorder specialist, right? And it's not this dramatic, okay, I'm going to open up and be vulnerable and share all my needs. I think it's like these little like micro moments where trust can be built, right?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe potentially within your relationship with your eating disorder therapist saying like, "Hey, I don't like that you just said that." Right? Like kind of
That
maybe
is the most
pushing back.
exciting.
Oh, I
It
love
is
it when clients do
exciting when that happens. I think it surprises people. When someone stands up for themselves in therapy, I'm so excited and
Oh. I'm like,
yeah.
"Yay." And they're like, "It doesn't hurt your feelings." I'm like, "No."
No, it's wonderful news. It truly
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Using your voice, oh my goodness, in that moment is incredible. Or
Yes.
asking for something, like
Yes.
asking for a need, even if it's, hey, could we meet
Yes.
a little bit more often, less often, different. I'm so thrilled when someone just even asks for something.
Yes. Yes. Or even saying, hey, this feels like too much right now and we need to
Yes.
back up.
Yes.
Right. And so it's those little and maybe not so little moments within your relationship where you can take up space, you can vocalize a need, and the person on the other end of that responds well.
Mhm.
Right? They respond with encouragement and support and validation. And that is what we call a corrective experience, right? You just put in a piece of information into your system that, hey, maybe this thing that we think is a big alarm actually is just like steam from boiling pasta, right? Right?
Oh,
Like it's gonna feel like, and it takes consistency over time, like multiple corrective experiences,
mhm.
but the more you're able to do that, the more your body is able to update itself and be like, oh, we can ask for what we need and what we want. And that's amazing that our brains can do that.
It's phenomenal, the brain's ability to change that pathway, and it happens slowly. Oftentimes, it's people will point it out for you, and as you grow, because it happens so slowly within you that oftentimes it takes someone else saying, "Hey, have you noticed that your capacity to ask for things has grown?" And that's really what this is all about, is like growing that internal capacity to tolerate the discomfort of asking for things or even just sharing a preference. Sometimes when I'm working with my clients, I'll talk about even if someone says like, where do you want to go for dinner? And you actually do have a thought in your mind and you normally wouldn't say it. How about just saying it and taking the risk of saying, I actually have this in mind,
Yes.
and even just throwing that out there to start, like, just sharing preferences as a way to start, like,
Mm,
risking this idea of, like, maybe it's okay to take up space in these, like, relationships in my life.
right. And so the name of the game here is doing this gradually over time, not jumping off a 60-foot cliff into abyss.
Yes,
And when
yes.
it comes to eating disorders, we love the black and white of things. It's real nice. And so we're either like we're up on the 60-foot cliff and that's where we're going to be, or we're into the abyss. There is no gradual.
Yes.
So this is also kind of a mind fuck a little bit with eating disorders
Mhm.
that can do things in little like what's the word?
Like, increments.
Yeah, increments.
I think about it as, like, you're slowly tiptoeing into a pool as you're getting used to it versus, yes, logically, I could just jump in the deep end and I would adapt really quick, or you hope maybe you might, but we're gonna go in the shallow end and we're gonna, like,
Yep.
gradually adjust.
Yep. It's like we're putting our toe in the water, taking it out.
Mhm.
Toe in the water, taking it out till you're kind of like, okay, just a toe in the water. Like not even thinking about that. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna put your foot in the water, take it.
Yep,
Like
it'll feel too easy, and that's actually the point. It'll feel
Yes.
That's what makes it safe versus, yes, you probably are capable maybe of just
Yeah.
diving in the other end, but that would be such a shock to your
Yeah.
system.
I think with my own eating disorder recovery, I had this, and I still have this with everything of like, I just want to rip the band-aid off and I
Yeah.
just want to be like, I'm done, healed. What do I need to do? I will jump off a 80-foot cliff into abyss if that can mean I no longer suffer.
Mm.
And so it was really hard to like have that lesson be, no, that isn't how you heal. And you're never going to heal that way. You need to go slow and pace yourself. Ooh, it's still
Yes.
and that's not just with eating disorder stuff. That's like with nervous system regulation stuff. I'm like, I
Oh
just
my
want to be
gosh.
here. However, I'm here and there's nothing that I can tangibly do to get here except show up in those increments over time.
Oh my gosh, especially because when you feel ready, that is so precious to you. It can be like, what if I lose this? Like, what if I lose this
Momentum.
sense of readiness? And
Yeah.
I so respect people's want to protect that and in that urgency to like make this change all at once. And so it's like, yes, we want to like respect that urgency and that like desire to protect something that's so precious to you. And the way that we protect that is by trying to really slowly do this work because we want to honor that pace, even though it's so hard. We won't lose it. If you're ready now, we're not going to vanish.
Right. But it's hard because you like lean on that momentum and that motivation of like, okay, we're going to do it.
Yep.
And we need to do it now because if we don't do it now, we're not doing
Oh, yeah.
it later. So yeah, it's those like little incremental shifts. And those incremental shifts within your relationships. It also is not just asking for needs, it's setting boundaries too, right? Of saying like, no, you will not treat me that way.
Exactly, which can be equally challenging. A
Yeah.
lot of times people have come from a lot of relationships where they're accustomed to just wanting to please other people for the
Yeah.
same reason of like
Yeah.
not being accustomed to having a voice or not being able to express preferences. And so this idea of being able to say no is equally scary.
Any last tidbits or thoughts when it comes to relationships and eating disorders that we can throw out there for people?
That is so good. I think I'm overthinking it. I'm trying to think of like the great, like an amazing like banger. And I'm like, I can go with like a B. I can go with like a B minus one.
Yeah, I mean, goes into like we don't need to jump off a 60-foot cliff and like develop like a banger statement at the end. Let's do like a little incremental.
I'm like trying to think of like what's my magnum opus statement.
I
And I was
know.
like, I don't need a magnum opus statement.
Oh,
It's just that the process of trying to heal in the context of relationships is complicated and can be messy and yet is also worth the it's like worth the work, but with the right person, I think that is such the key is
yeah.
honoring that being mindful of the people you're choosing uh
Mhm.
to do this work with. And
Slow and steady wins the race.
yeah, really, like, doing this slowly and also just that, I mean, I think I'm so biased in saying this, but having the support of a therapist if you're doing relationship work and attachment-oriented work is so valuable to have that space to process what's going on in your relationships because it can be really tricky to assess. I'm feeling scared in this relationship. I want to bail, but also I think that I'm getting all the signs that this is actually safe, but the safety is
Yeah,
making me question everything and
yeah,
having that neutral space to actually figure all of this out is so valuable. And
so
so, but I
valuable.
also know that I'm incredibly biased in making that statement, but
That's
that's
okay.
always what I think is so important too.
I mean, yeah, we're biased because we're therapists, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Caitlin, thank you again so much for coming on. I really love like picking your brain and talking about this kind of stuff.
You.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to learn more about Caitlin, I'm going to put her information in the description below. And on that note, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me on Trauma Tea and Tangents. If something here made you laugh, cry, or feel a little bit more seen, then my job here is done. Remember, this isn't therapy, but if you are curious about the real thing, you can check out my practice Revive Therapy Services. And if you are wanting more tangents, tea, and truth bombs, make sure to follow, subscribe, or share this with someone who just gets it. Until next time, take care of your nervous system, drink some water, and please stop trying to diagnose your ex.